Steve, let me just start by introducing myself. Chris, part of the pod with Rob. Great to have you on it, Steve. I've got so many questions, and I know Rob, I know Bob does as well. And I guess first port of call, Steve. I mean, how are you enjoying life? Obviously, punditry work now. We'll get to your playing career as we go over the course of the next hour, Steve. But you enjoy the punditry stuff?
Yes, I do, Chris. Actually, it allows me to get to the football stadiums. It allows me to stay abreast of all the information that you need to know. So it's just part of what I do at the moment. But yeah, I do actually enjoy it. I work with a really nice group of people, and the companies I work for are excellent and treat you very well. And we have a good chemistry. So yeah, it gives me a nice balance at the moment, because of course when you play football, as Robbie will attest, you're away constantly. You're staying overnight in hotels for days on end. You very rarely see the family. Your life is dedicated to your pursuit of how you can be in your best possible shape, how you can perform well the next game you're playing, whether it's a Tuesday, Wednesday in Europe, or a Saturday, Sunday in the league. So everything revolves around getting you ready for that game. It doesn't revolve around your family. The family comes at the end of the season, really, when you've got time off, or if you have time off. But as everybody knows now with football, and if you play at the highest level, you're either playing European games, traveling, playing international games. You know, people might have time off next week, but it's not necessarily a good thing. It means you're not playing for your country. So, when you're playing for your country and when you've got championships at the end of the season, your season just carries on and on and on. And I think that's why you're seeing, I think if you look now to the Premier League and you see why teams are having injuries, or why teams were having injuries last year, I think it's just this incessant football without any rest, and it catches up on everybody. You might go a year or two and get away with it, but if you keep on playing as many games as some of the stars are playing, it will catch up on you, and that will be the disappointing part for some of the teams.
Shag, I've noticed obviously the last year or so, I think has your role not changed in terms of what you do now? Because when I was obviously watching the television, and you would be like the main pundit, obviously for the television channels in the UK. But now you're doing more co-coms. Is that something that you wanted to get into, or did you not enjoy being the guest as per se, or did you want to get into the co-coms?
It doesn't necessarily bother me, to be honest, Bob. I do that on Tuesday, for instance. This week in England, I was a pundit, a guest with Michael Owen for the Real Madrid game, and then last night the Chelsea game, I was co-coms. So it chops and changes at times. I actually don't mind either way. I think people ask me to co-com because of a certain reason or the various reasons, and they liked what I heard. They liked what I said, so I've maintained that role at the moment. But it's flexible and changeable, and it's just whatever people think at the time and whoever's playing at the time, I presume. So no, it wasn't a conscious effort to say I want to get into this or I want to get away from that. I mean, co-coms, you turn up for the game itself, and you leave when the game is finished to a certain extent, particularly now when there's no fans in, where, of course, the punditry angle, you're in a lot earlier, you're studying more clips of the game. You know, afterwards, you're talking for, half an hour, 45 minutes, dissecting what's gone on in the game. So the role is different, but I don't necessarily have a preference for either one. I enjoy both of them, depending what type of game it is, to be very honest.
We will come back to punditry, and I would love to get your thoughts, Steve, on this current Liverpool team. Of course, I'm sure you've passed judgment on it over the course of the past few days. I want to focus in on you, though, and your time as a player, Steve, coming through at Liverpool. It seems that there's a theme throughout all of the guys that we've spoken to. Boyhood Everton fan, yet you end up at Liverpool. How did that come about?
Yes, I was the same as Robbie, and I think you've spoken to Cara, haven't you? Certainly Cara. There's a couple of other we can mention. My dad was an Everton fan. It was as simple as that, because he was a mad Everton fan. My father, his brothers were Liverpool fans, but my dad was an Everton fan. And he brought me up as an Everton fan. From the very early age, I adored football. I adored watching my father play. I adored going to games with my father. So as soon as I was old enough, like the story goes, you would be carried into Goodison Park to watch Everton, and that's where the love affair came with Everton. When I was old enough to go by myself, I acquired a junior Evertonian ticket, which was like sort of the younger boy's pen in the Gladys Street.
Used to buy them at Christmas when they were half price, really.
used to buy them for, I think it was about £1 a game in the end. So used to sit in the Gladys Street, and I was fortunate really, because by the age of 10, 11, 12, we were getting into the early 80s, where Liverpool and Everton were extremely dominant, and they were they were at Wembley every other week. The two teams, I think they were at Wembley 9 times in the 80s and playing each other on numerous occasions. I watched Everton win the FA Cup in '84 when I was 12 with my father, which was an incredible day. And then I continued to watch Everton win the league. Win the semi-final against Bayern Munich, and Goodison, of course, win the European Cup Winners' Cup. So I watched Everton during the glory days as well, and it was just a case of I was playing good football locally. I was playing for the Liverpool schoolboys. I was playing a year above my age. Lots of scouts would watch those type of games because there was no academies back then, and it was a question of a lot of people wanted me to sign for them, and it was who I would sign for. I didn't want to leave the city of Liverpool. I was very much a mummy and daddy's boy, and I didn't want to leave the house. I couldn't dream of living in another city and staying in digs or in somebody else's house. So it was a question of Everton and Liverpool, and when it came round to talks, Liverpool was so much better at that particular age of not luring you in, that's the wrong thing, making you feel wanted, making you feel special, making you feel at the age of 14 and 15 that you've got a path to play in the future, even though they had the best team in Europe and certainly in England and stroke Europe. So the things they said, Kenny Dalglish was the manager. I went into his office with my father, and he said really nice things about me. And as anybody will mention at the time, Kenny Dalglish was, the best, the most famous. He was Liverpool player manager at the time. They were winning trophies galore. So when he says nice things about you, and when he says, I want you to come and join this club, and when he says, I've got these plans for you, and on the contrary, Everton were nothing like that at all. It was almost as if Everton was saying, you're an Everton fan, it should be, it should be easy to play for Everton. It should be a joy to play for Everton, which of course it would have been. But I think at 14, when you're very vulnerable of, am I going to make it? Am I going to leave school at 16 and join one of these football teams? Or am I going to stay on in higher education and take my A-levels and go into university and try that? At 14, it's a big pivotal moment. So I remember we left Kenny Dalglish's office, and we'd already spoken to Everton the week before. And my father said to me, you're going to have to join Liverpool. And, my mind was made up then when I left Kenny's office, to be very honest, that Liverpool was the right, even though I was a mad Evertonian, Liverpool was actually the right club to further my career.
When you're talking about obviously the Everton Liverpool, I was obviously in the same boat. Did you feel as though, forget about what your dad had said, but did you feel as though that was a better pathway for you all along, or because obviously you must have trained at Everton, so you must have been involved with some?
I didn't train at Everton at all. I went to a couple of cup finals with Everton, and Everton, gave me tickets to watch some of the games. And of course, I went into the dressing room before one particular game. But I hadn't trained at Everton. I didn't really know any of and I hadn't trained at Liverpool, to be perfectly honest. I just played for the local schoolboys. But it was a case of when you leave school at 16, I was only very small at the age of 14. And at the age of 16 to 18, it's such an important time of your career. And I wanted that job security to a certain extent, even though it was the YTS scheme at the time, and you got paid buttons. So it actually didn't matter if you joined or not, because they weren't taking a chance on you because you were getting paid by the government. Liverpool, wanted me more than Everton. They would say, from 16 to 18, you'd leave school, you'd join us, you'd do this, you'd do that. And Everton were a little bit blasé, saying, we don't really do that. We don't really offer things like that. And if you're good enough, of course, we'll keep you on. But it's so paramount that at 16 to 18, you get the opportunity to grow, progress, learn how to play football with people who have got a higher standard than you did when you played at 14 or 15, who are grown men who you could adapt to how you're playing with. It came down to a simple shootout like that. And to give myself the best possible chance, it was always going to be Liverpool. I knew I was small at 14 and 15. I was very thin, which I continued to be. So I needed time to develop and I needed time to grow. And I was a late starter in that, growing into a man. So I needed that 16, 17, 18 years to be able to sort of adapt to how I could play and start to fill out, and more importantly, start to grow. I didn't necessarily start to fill out width-wise, but I certainly shot up when I was 16, 17, and that helped me become the player I was.
Mac, I was going to say, so obviously, I mean, I know who your favourite player was at Everton, so what was your role growing up, and what position was you? Because I know what player you became and what a player you are and what player you was.
Well, I was always very good at my age group in the area where I lived in Kirkdale, and then we play in the Walton Kirkdale League. So I was always predominantly like a goal scorer, because of course at that age you could take 4 or 5 people on and score all the time. So when I played in the Liverpool reserves at 6, I was always a forward player. I think when I would go back to when I joined Liverpool, I was probably a wide player. I think at the age of 16. At 17, I remember in the reserves, when we won the reserves league at 17, I played up front with Ronnie Rosenthal at the time, and we scored lots of goals between us. And then when I made my Liverpool debut under Kenny, I came on as a wide player. But then when I made my sort of sustained time in the team with Graham Souness, I think I started at centre forward. I remember scoring my first goal for Liverpool, and I was playing centre forward, I think. So I was always a forward player, but I was never a centre forward with my back to goal and hold the ball up. I was always a runner, and I was always skillful. So I think it was only, and I wasn't as a natural finisher like you were, or the Liverpool players who'd gone in front of me, like, I don't know, Aldo or Rushy or people like that. They were natural footballers, natural goal scorers. I was never going to be one of them. I was going to be different. So when I'd look at a Barnes or a Beardsley who were in the sides, with me, but in front of me as well, who I was training with, I thought I saw myself more of a technical type of player, rather than the Rushies and the centre forwards that I was training with on a daily basis in the late 80s. So that's why you adapt your games, don't you? And your game changes when you start playing with different people.
We had Ian Rush on the pod, Steve, and he spoke, and Rob spoke about him being a bit of a mentor to Robbie. Who kind of took you under their wing? Obviously, you've already talked about Kenny and his role in you joining the football club. On the field, did anyone have their arm around you and make sure you were well looked after?
Well, I used to look after, when I was an apprentice, I'd look after John Barnes and I think Bruce Grobbelaar at times, cleaning the boots and putting the kit out. But as Robbie will mention, it was quite a brutal place. The first team, they were the very best of the best, and it was a school of hard knocks. And you had to survive, and you had to get on with it, and you had to take criticism. You had to take people trying to take the piss out of you a bit, and you had to be strong and respond to them. Otherwise, you could easily sink in that environment. It was hard going at times, but I was a Liverpool lad. I could always stick up for myself. I always had an answer back, a smart answer back. So it was okay. And more importantly, if you could survive in the training sessions, if you could survive on the pitch and they knew you were good enough, that was their seal of approval. The fact that they would pass you the ball and you'd pass it back quick, or you pass it and move forward and you'd play in these games, that was their seal of approval. That was their pat on the back. But don't get me wrong, when I was 17, before I'd made my debut, I was travelling with the first team on a regular basis. So they'd always keep an eye on you. But it was always a case of you have to win them over. You have to prove that you're good enough. And then you'd sort of be accepted. But, they all helped me in their way. And the fact that you're still friends with a lot of them now shows that, they were nice people. There was no nasty people to a certain extent. No people who would say horrific things here or make your life, bully you or anything like that. But it was a case of you'd have to stand up and be counted and get on with it.
Shaggy, talking about obviously your setup with Liverpool there, so you'd played a number of years, and then obviously you're training with the first team. I mean, I vividly remember, obviously I wasn't playing with you at the time because I'm just a little bit younger than you, but I vividly remember you being one of the first player to play for England under 21s without playing for, the actual first team. And nowadays people do it left, right and centre, don't they? But I remember you doing that years ago. It was a game at Tranmere Rovers, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think I was 17 or 18, something like that. And I don't know whether I must have been playing no, I hadn't been playing for the first team. I don't know why I got called in, to be honest. I mean, it was so far ago, I can't remember. I think I was playing well for the reserves. I think they had a local game. They probably had a few injuries and thought we'll get him across and play. I don't know. I can't even remember, mate, to be very honest. I must have been doing something right to get called into the team. I was very young. I remember it going okay, and it probably helped. But I was always on the periphery then. You know what it's like growing up. If you're playing well in the reserves, it's not necessarily like now, the under-23s and the under-18s. The gap is so different. But if you're playing well in the reserves and you're doing well in the reserves, you're high. You're on people's lips already, because the reserves was, just an accumulation of the players who didn't play on a Saturday for the first team played in the reserve. So the reserve level was very, very high. And, there's a time you'd be playing Manchester United and you'd be playing against the Brian Robsons or the Mark Hugheses, because they may have not played on the Saturday or they may be recovering from injuries. So the standard of the reserve team level was brilliant at the time. So if you were doing well in the reserves at a young age, the local papers would be writing about you, people would be noticing you. So maybe that was the case back then. As I said, I can't necessarily remember the goings on of why I got called into that under-21 team.
I mean, you just mentioned it yourself there with obviously doing well for the reserves and scored a few goals, but that was the local papers. So obviously you're getting catapulted into 21s. But if you think of players now in this generation, I mean, they play, maybe 3 or 4 good games for the under-18s, under-21s, under-23s. And social media just tells you that straight away they're going to get into maybe an England under-21 team or, a good England youth team. Yeah, but I mean that's just the way we are at the moment. I think everybody now they're put into these teams and they're almost looked at these teams. It's not as if it's not good enough. That's not the wrong word. That's not the right word. It's almost this: they're in the squad, then we look at you, then you play, and then you may be out of the squad. I think nowadays you need to play 10, 20 times in the under-21s now to get established as a really good player, because it's the same with England, the England first team. There's that many players now have played 1 game, 2 games, get looked at training sessions and then never get seen again. I think that's a way of everybody looking at the attitude of the person, see what they're like around the camp. Back in when we played, it was really difficult to get into the England squads. It was really difficult to get into the under-21s because there was that many players. And that many players playing well. But I don't think it is difficult now. I think everybody's going to be an international somewhere down the line, at some level. I'm glad you said that, because I'd scored nearly 100 Premier League goals before I got my first cap.
I was speaking to, I was with Les Ferdinand recently, of course. Les was a brilliant centre-forward like yourself. And when we went through that era of trying to get into the England team, when it was you, Andy Cole, Chris Sutton, and I'm starting a bit younger at your age. And then above you, it was like Ian Wright, Les Ferdinand, Shearer, Sheringham. I mean, it was just impossible. You had to be 30 goals a season every season to maintain your level in the England team. It's not like that now. I can pick 3 centre forwards who could play for England now. I pick Harry Kane and then they get stuck. So it's like Harry Kane will play. Yeah. Wayne Rooney's retired. Jamie Vardy doesn't want to play anymore for England. So you get to that phase where, if you're a really good centre forward scoring 20 goals, 25 goals, and you're English, you're in the squad. Whereas back then, that didn't guarantee you anything. That guaranteed you 4th pick, 5th pick. So it's completely different. And now we've got an abundance of attacking midfielders, haven't we? Foden's brilliant, Grealish is great, Mount's great, Maddison's great. One of them are going to have to miss out, maybe. There might be 2 miss out, I don't know. They all might go, but I'm saying sometimes you get an abundance of players where, you can't get in the England squad. Sometimes you're quite weak in numbers, and then you're in every single game.
I think it was Joey Barton, wasn't it, on this podcast, Robbie, that said it's his belief, and I'd be keen to get your thoughts, Steve. He was saying, and the players that you've just listed there, that's just England strikers back in the 90s. He thinks that football's got worse. He thinks the players today couldn't hold a candle to the players of yesteryear. Do you think football is moving in the right direction?
At international level for England, did you mean, Chris?
Yeah.
I think time will tell. I think we did well in the last tournament. I think we should have done well in the last tournament. I think the the route to the semi-final was the easiest we've had in a long, long time. The defeat by Belgium really helped us because it made us play Sweden and Colombia. I'd fully expect England to beat Sweden and Colombia, no disrespect to those two sides, when I looked at the way they played, and Colombia had, the star man missing. I thought England should have been good enough to beat Croatia. I was disappointed, but we got to the semi-final, so that glossed over. We'll wait and see. If we play in these Euros and we're fantastic and we win, will we all be proved wrong? Whether we're playing better football, I don't think we played particularly good football in the last tournaments, but we got to the semi-final. So again, that proves you wrong to a certain extent. But I'm a football purist, and I like to see England play teams off the park, and whether we'll do that in this next tournament again. But I think the fact that we all played our best football a long time ago, I think proves Joey right to a certain extent. But, we're all saying this. We just need our national team, and it was me when I played, and it was Robbie when he played. We need our national team to prove us wrong, don't we, and win a trophy. When you look at the team of 2004 and 2006, and you look at those names on paper, you can't believe we didn't win anything with Michael and Wayne and Stephen and Scholes and Frank Lampard. That team was incredible. Sol Campbell, Rio Ferdinand, whoever played, Ashley Cole. I mean, when you go through it, you think, how didn't we win anything? But we were nowhere near good enough getting to quarterfinals. Nowhere near. I know we may have went out in penalties, but we should have been dismantling, beating these teams comfortably, not getting to penalties. So maybe there is a bit of truth in that. I don't necessarily think when I watch England in tournaments that we played fantastic football yet, and I'm hoping Gareth gets that right in the next trophy in a couple of months.
Is the pool of English players? I know you've just obviously spoken a little bit about it, but is the pool of English players now diminished to what it was years ago? I mean, you spoke before about the strikers we've had.
Yeah, I think so.
Strikers, but obviously there's lots of great midfielders as well. But nowadays there's not as many. Now, is that the Premier League's fault for allowing so many foreigners in, or is that just we're not progressing as players as good as what we were?
I think we are weaker than the English players are weaker. Yes. When I go back to the 2000 squad, the 98 squads, the 96 squads, the strength and depth of the whole squad, I thought was far stronger than it is now. Whether it's the Premier League's fault, Bob, I don't know. I think you'd have to look at all the numbers. I think we have to do something to get more English players playing in England. But I don't know what happens with, of course, with the EU rules and Brexit rules, and you have to have so many players. But I do feel that sometimes we buy players in from other countries when we have, very strong academies. I think that goes without saying. I think you need to give the academies a chance. I think we all got chances when we were young. And I think that's paramount now. I think, speaking at Liverpool, I think they do give their kids a chance. They really do. So you're not necessarily criticising them, but I think we should give more players a chance. But, I understand why you can't as well, because if you don't win on a Saturday because you're playing a 17, 18-year-old kids and you're inexperienced, you get absolutely slaughtered. In England, we think Borussia Dortmund are amazing because they play Sancho and Bellingham and Reina. But in Germany, they're getting hammered because they mightn't get into the Champions League places this year. So it's a fine line of, how to balance it up and get the right amount of young players in and develop them, and also acquiring the Champions League places, which keep the bosses happy, which will keep the manager in the job, which will keep the fans happy.
Yeah, but I don't think it's going to change anytime soon, is it? We just obviously spoke about it's hard for the governing body to say, well, you can only have X amount of foreign players. I think we're too far gone now. So you can't suddenly say, well, you're only getting four foreign players as opposed to 10 or 11. It's not going to happen.
You look in the academies now. I don't know what the percentages of foreign kids is, but when I was in the so-called YTS scheme, so-called apprentices. And when you were in the academies, there was hardly any foreign kids, at 15, 16, because certainly in Liverpool, we felt we had an abundance of talented kids there. And, this probably goes right across the country. But now, half the kids are foreign. I don't know. Someone would have to tell me and do the maths. But you're thinking that you're acquiring kids from Brazil, all across Eastern Europe, sometimes America, Australia at 15, 16, 17 years of age. I mean, is that just diluting it? Is that just diluting and putting more people in the pool when you've already got players good enough here anyway? I don't know.
Well, it's fair to say that you were a trailblazer, Steve. You've already referenced Jadon Sancho and Jude Bellingham. I think they deserve enormous credit. It would have been easy for them to have stayed at Man City, earned a pretty penny. Jadon's went to Dortmund. Jude Bellingham had Man United after him. He made the decision with his family. He'd be better served heading to Germany. You did so. You made the move, obviously a little older. Jude and Jadon in their teenage years. I think you were 27 when you made the move to Madrid. If I can, take me back to that period in your life. I know a lot was written at the time. I know Barca were sniffing around a couple of years before that. Arsenal were linked with you as well. The move to Madrid, how did it come about?
Well, I always... I was getting to the end of my Liverpool contract. I felt Liverpool were very slow in coming to me for a new deal. And as it got on 2 years, a year and a half, a year to go with the contract, I just felt that the opportunity now to play abroad, which I always wanted to do, I was always thinking about doing, was more prevalent than ever. I felt that the Liverpool team I was playing in, if you look back, and I've said this on numerous occasions, I hadn't played in the Champions League at that time because, of course, it was only the winners of the league played in the Champions League and possibly the second team. And I wanted, my football was very good in the, 96, 97, 98. And I felt I just wanted to be playing at a higher level than I was at Liverpool. I felt Liverpool were on the cusp of a change, which proved right when Gerard Houllier came in without anybody telling Roy Evans about it. And I just felt it was the time to leave.
Were you hurt by that? Just listening to you there, and Rob's spoken about this very honestly as well with Gerard Houllier arriving, whereas a Stephen and a Jamie, they got on board with what Gerard wanted. Robbie, your own admission, you were a bit older, a bit long in the tooth. Did that stick in the throat a little bit, Roy's treatment at the football club, Steve, and of course your own treatment in the sense that contract wasn't forthcoming as quick as you would have liked?
I think it's different now. Contract situations are very different now. I think I'm speaking up by myself. I'm not asking on Robbie or Jamie Carragher's behind, but I always thought the Liverpool lads or the younger players were treated very differently. I was arguably the best player in the team at the time, and I was possibly the worst paid in the team at the time. So some players would come in and earn 2, 3, 4 times more than me. So, and I was not, I didn't have an agent at Liverpool, so I was never chasing them. I was always leaving it up to them. And you always felt that they thought, he's a local lad, he'll be okay. And it wasn't the case with me. It certainly wasn't the case with me. So when they came, with their contract offer first, it was a case of trying to get everybody in the room. And it was like, well, it's only me. I'm available 24 hours a day. I can easily come to Anfield. Just let me know. And, I think I got told that we'll have a meeting in September and the meeting happens in April. And I was just, it's like you could have a meeting and the meeting lasted 4 seconds. We're going to offer you this, we're going to offer you that. And I just said, no, thank you. And then that was it. And I think they realised then, we haven't, this is not good enough. And then, of course, subsequently, their offers got bigger and bigger and bigger as it got to the end. And it was like, why didn't you offer me this deal, when we had this first meeting? And it might have been a different scenario, but I was well on my way then of thinking that, they're not really appreciating me. I'm still playing well. The team's, changing a little bit. And don't get me wrong, I wasn't necessarily, I didn't like the way they treated Roy Evans in bringing Gerard Houllier in as joint manager. I didn't like that at all. I thought it was terrible. I thought it was awful to treat someone like Roy Evans like that without telling them what role he was going to come in. He thought he was going to come in as a coach. I mean, Roy might have a different idea. I'm thinking from an outsider. I thought Roy was thinking that he's going to get a coach, this new coach with great ideas, and we'll put on brilliant training sessions, which would have been amazing. But the fact that he came in as assistant manager, joint manager, you could only see it. You could only see this spiraling. If anything good happened, it was down to Gerard. If anything bad happened, it was down to Roy. But my relationship with Gerrard's was great, so I've got no problem. I've got no problem with him as a Liverpool manager. We got on really well. He arrived. He said, "I'm a new manager. I'm from a foreign country. I totally understand what you are thinking about and why you would want to play. And I know," he said, "but all I would ask is that you could let me know as soon as possible your decision, so I could try and get a player ready for when you leave." And I said, that's perfect. And they continued to try and, get me to sign a new contract. This wasn't a case of, we know you're leaving, because I hadn't decided then. But Gerrard's was brilliant with me.
Shag, what you obviously mentioned there, so you talked about the process of obviously getting them to offer you contracts. When did the Barcelona bid come in? And obviously the club allowed you to go. Was that a year before?
That came in 96, 97, I think, Bob. It came in a couple of years before, yeah.
Well, did that have any bearing on your decision as well, though? Because you knew that you were obviously willing to listen to clubs.
Well, I think that's the stark reality of a football player, isn't it? You think you're loved, you think you're wanted, and then an offer comes in which they find it hard to refuse. And then the funny thing is, I was told 2 weeks ago by an agent that Barcelona were coming in and were going to bid for me. And Liverpool, and then he'd phone me and say, "Just to let you know, Liverpool have accepted this offer." And I'm like, "Well, I haven't heard anything off Liverpool." And then about a week later, before the game, I think it was Leicester City or something like that, Liverpool called me in and said, "We've accepted this offer off you." So I'd known everything was going on in the past, the week before. And their time of telling me when, it happened was just late. It wasn't professional because I had a game for them. So I think the whole surroundings of it, because when Liverpool said I could go and speak to them, and actually a couple of phone calls later, and I knew it wasn't happening with Barcelona. And then it became a PR exercise then, Liverpool sticking up for themselves, me wanting to leave. And, and it wasn't the case themselves. I can't leave unless they accept an offer and they allow me to speak to anybody else. So I just think it showed how brutal it can be, really. You are an asset, you were an asset. And if someone comes in with a ridiculous amount of money, they can actually say yes. But if someone comes in with an amount of money that they don't think, they just go no. So it shows you that, as much as anything, that this is the business of football. The offer was good enough in 97, and they accepted it. And then some of the stories that were coming out in the press were just all wrong. But of course, there's nothing you can do because your word can't win against Liverpool Football Club. So I just come back to, I think it was like we had a break anyway at that time. I don't know whether it was an international break or something. And I had a few days in Spain, came back, and then you come back to a furore of nonsense in the newspapers that you're trying to say to people, well, that's not true. Well, that wasn't true, and that wasn't true. But, it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, it probably wasn't an international break. It was probably just the next round of the Cup.
but that had no bearing in me signing for Real Madrid in the end. I think it was just the culmination of things later on. Once I came back from after that game, the season after and the season after, my football was excellent. So it didn't necessarily have a bearing on me. I always had a thought in my mind that if I was ever good enough, I wouldn't mind playing abroad. But if Liverpool would have offered me a really good contract, 2 years before my contract ran out, like they'd done previously, I may have said, you know what, I can't knock this back. This is amazing. I love it here. And I may have signed, but the fact that there was the accumulation of not feeling wanted, and whatever, I got to the point where then it was a case of, you know what, I think I might go.
I've got to throw this quote at you, Steve, because I think it was Raul in the press. You make up your mind, you head for the Santiago Bernabeu, and it's fair to say Real Madrid wasn't a happy camp when you arrived. And the quote that I've got in front of me here, this is Raul, for goodness sake. This is an icon of Madrid who said the dressing room is a cesspit of lies, treachery and whispers. He actually came out to say that he felt sorry for you that you were coming into that. What was it? Is that an accurate portrayal of that dressing room day one when you arrived in the Spanish capital?
I think when he said that was at the end of the season. And by the time the new season come around, a lot of the so-called, these people, I wouldn't say treacherous vipers, because I know a lot of them had left the club. You know, Davor Suker had left, and I think he had a relationship with somebody who was on the television, which wasn't helpful. Pedro Mijatovic left, who'd scored the winning goal in '98. Clarence Seedorf left very quickly when I arrived, left for Milan. And a number of new players came in alongside with me. And it was actually okay. I think when Madrid don't win anything, which they didn't win the year before I arrived, they won the Champions League in '98. And in '99, they didn't win anything. They qualified again for the Champions League, but they didn't win anything. And I think it gets to the point where, you know, there's major problems, and like the Spanish press are, and like they are today, everybody blames everybody. But it soon I must admit, when I arrived in the dressing room, it was fine. It was fine. We went straight away on pre-season training. The manager had changed, of course. John Toshak had come in, you know, an ex-Liverpool player. So all the exercises and things he was doing were all Liverpool-based. Of course, he spoke English, so that helped a great deal when I very first arrived. And we went to a training camp in 2 weeks, and you just try and adapt and get on with a lot of the Spanish lads, which I did. So I didn't feel under various amounts of pressure, because I went from like one huge club with a fantastic history like Liverpool, who adorn all the walls with trophies and ex-players and ex-superstars. And Real Madrid was exactly the same. It was just people spoke a foreign language. That was all it was.
I think with obviously you talk about obviously Real Madrid and obviously your plan and your way of getting over there. So you spoke about John Toshak obviously being the manager at the time. But one of the things that strikes me about you, and obviously not strikes me because I know you, but your role within that dressing room is vital, because you're very outgoing, you want to speak, you want to learn the languages, whereas I think lots of English players going abroad, or lots of UK-based players going abroad, struggle because they don't really want to get themselves engaged in the dressing room. They struggle with languages. But you went straight away there. You learned the language pretty quick. You mixed and shared lots of restaurant meals and various nights out with players. So did that sort of enlighten you to the camp straight away? Did they get used to a little bit more?
Yeah, because I got to the end of the season, and I knew I had to be very proactive. You see, of course, I played my last game for Liverpool on, I think, May 17. My mother died on May 19, as you know, because we went up to Sunderland for that to open the Stadium of Light, and I couldn't play in the end because I had to come home. And then I did all the things with the family, and then I felt as if, right, new chapter, new start, I have to be very proactive. So I flew over to Madrid early in the summer to look at houses and to look at apartments, because I didn't want to turn up, you know, a couple of days before and live in a hotel. It would have drove me mad living in a hotel bedroom when you've got 5 suitcases and things like that. So I went over with my girlfriend, my wife now at the time, and I looked at, 20, 30 apartments and houses, thinking that I need to get myself sorted. It was quiet, so nobody knew I was there, which the Spanish press couldn't believe. So I'd looked at a load of houses, and I seen a house that I liked, and I thought, great. And I signed the deed then, and I knew it'd be ready in, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks time for when I came home. Scooted back to the airport. There was always stories of me, the new Real Madrid signing, being in Madrid, and nobody knew about it, and they couldn't believe it. And in the end, I got to the airport to fly back to Liverpool, and there was loads of press waiting for me there. It was the first time they'd had a picture of me properly. But I knew then 6 weeks later when I went over, I moved into a house. And, I was very lucky because I went on pre-season tour for 2 months. For 2 weeks to into the mountains of Switzerland. And by the time I'd come back, my wife had, furnished most of the house, because some of it was already furnished. She'd furnished most of the house. The television was in, the horse racing was on. So I felt really comfortable when I came back. So when you live in a house, you've got no worries necessarily. The wife's happy because she can get out and go to shops. I bought her a car. I had a car, so she had her independence, which she was very she's a very independent lady anyway. She spoke a number of languages, so she could get by, whether it's by speaking to people in French or German at the time. Of course, she learned Spanish. So we were settled straight away. So I was happy then. The only thing I had to worry about was my football. My wife got a job in one of the universities there, teaching English law to Spanish law students. So she was happy. It wasn't as if she was stuck in the house every day lonely. So we both lived this really contented life. I was away a lot, of course, playing football, and away more with Madrid playing the Champions League, because we'd go 2 nights before a game when you played away. So I can understand why people struggle when they come to a foreign countries. That's why I have every sympathy now with a lot of the foreign players coming into England, particularly with what's going on with the pandemic and not being able to travel and not having any family members with you. Because it's a hard life. If you don't speak the language, it can be very lonely. But you just that's part and parcel of the business. You just have to get out. I knew it was going to be like that when it came, and I just had to make myself the best possible person for when I started playing football.
So obviously you sign now. We see it in obviously the UK. So when new players sign for a club over here, do you have some sort of initiation? was initiations the thing at Real Madrid?
Yeah, I mean it was a stupid thing. Like, we went out for a big meal and you sang a song, and it was funny at the time
stupid,
because
I know. That's normal.
No, that's what I mean. So you expect something mad to happen in Spain, or something different, or them to be more aloof, or to be have a different initiation. But we went out for a meal, and Rob Jones, who of course was our ex-teammate as well, he came over to visit, and he had to get up and sing a song as well. But yeah, I mean, no one could understand me because I spoke English. So we just got up and sang a song. But there was about 4 or 5 of us at the time. There was a lad, Jeremy, who went on to play for Chelsea. He came from Turkey. He was from Cameroon. He got up and sung a song. Michel Salgado was a player who came in with me. Another lad from Bosnia came in. So it was fine, actually. There was plenty of people about. And when you know what it's like, when you go to those type of meals and have a drink and have some food, you realise that everybody's great. Everybody has a laugh. And there isn't any really, as Raul said previously, treacherous vipers in the dressing room. Everybody has their own style. You'd have funny ones, you'd have mad ones, you'd have quiet ones, you'd have, sullen ones. And that's just the dressing room in general when there's 25 people in there.
Now be honest with me, Chris. Hang on. Be honest with me, Stephen. Was it a Beatles number you sang?
I don't. You know what, mate? I don't know. You can always rely on a Beatles song. You always know all the words. It's ingrained when you're a 4 and 5-year-old, that you know all the words to every Beatles song going. So it could have easily been. It wasn't Yellow Submarine like a song got me initiation.
Well, no, Trigger might have struggled with the lyrics to that one.
Talk to me about, you've said there that you've settled quickly and the reasons that you've outlined there, Steve. I remember watching quite recently, actually, a documentary with Nicholas Anelka. Forgive me if I'm wrong here. Did he join the same summer as you, 1999?
Yes, I joined sort of the first day, and he came along about a month later in the latter transfer window. So yes, he did. He joined me. I got a month start on him. I think something like that, 3 week start, whatever.
He's spoken of a cold dressing room. He's spoken of an environment where no one took him on. He felt very quickly as an outsider. Now, it's fair to say, Nicholas, I think if you speak to most of his clubs, that he has been a bit of an outsider. Does that fly in the eye then of the memories that you have? Robbie's told me that you are a very outgoing person. So did you feel that you had to make an effort in that dressing room, and perhaps Nicholas, the way that he is personality-wise, he perhaps struggled because of that?
Yeah. In a nutshell, yes. I felt I had to make an effort. He may have felt that they needed to make an effort for him, but we're talking about players who won the Champions League 18 months prior. They're not. They're big stars, and they were massive stars in Spain, and they play for Real Madrid. That they'll make an effort if you make an effort. But if you're quite, people say shy about Nicholas, people say other things about Nicholas. I always thought he was fine. I always thought he was misunderstood, but he was very quiet. He was very quiet, and he didn't feel as if he made an effort. His effort was to go home, every day. And initially he was okay because he was bedding in, but he, further down the line, he didn't help himself coming out and making grandiose statements because he wasn't playing a lot, because Morientes and Raul were playing. And, he didn't adhere himself to his teammates in the end. He didn't adhere himself to the club at all. And, he had to train on his own, if I can remember, for a month on his own, because we'd train in the morning, he'd train in the afternoon because of disciplinary reasons, because of what he said in newspapers, blah, blah, blah. So, it was never easy. And you knew that no matter what happened, which actually came true, because Nicholas scored in the semi-final and played in the final, you always knew he was going to leave the club at the end of the season because of the relationship with everybody. So it was, it was quite sad, really. And, Nicholas has lived this nomadic lifestyle, really, in football, hasn't he? He's gone from club to club to club to club to club. And, of course, he's done very well for himself. And I think he's getting involved with a sporting director role in the club in France at this moment in time. And, he was just that type of person. He was just very quiet at the time.
Shag, tell us about the... sorry, go on, carry on.
No, go on.
Well, tell us about the... you mentioned before about when Gerard Houllier was coming into Liverpool, you're thinking the training session is going to be a little bit different and a little bit more modern, if you like. What was the difference in terms of training at Real Madrid with all the Galacticos as opposed to training with the Liverpool players?
There wasn't any difference, Bob. There never is any difference. You train for 300 days a year for 10 years, 12 years of your career. There's very little difference in training. It's just a question of pre-season, you get as fit as you can. And then you're playing Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Sunday. Well, at the time in Spain, it was predominantly on the Saturday. Tuesday, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, travelling 2 or 3 nights around Europe, going to Russia to play a game in the Champions League, going to Prague to play a game in the Champions League. You get back on the Thursday, you run around on the Friday, keep yourself going, and then you play again on the Saturday. You win and you do it all again. Training is just a case of ticking over, looking after yourself. I think we had more responsibility at Real Madrid. The managers would say, look, if you don't feel great, do what you need to do today. If you want to go in the gym, go in the gym. If you want to massage, go on a massage. We're training. But if you've got, if you don't feel up to it, have a relax, really, because the players were ultra professional. Everybody wanted to win like crazy and wanted to be successful, and the pressure was on to win like crazy. So that was probably the only thing, really.
Was there more of a technical or a tactical analysis videos or not like that? No.
When Vicente Del Bosque came in, he kept it as easy as possible. It's a case of we've got the better team. If we're professional enough, we'll win 9 times out of 10. We'll be defeated now and again, or we'll, come a cropper now and again, like we did in the Champions League when we played Bayern Munich and they beat us twice comfortably home and away in the group stage. But I remember he didn't say much after the game. Let's get back to Madrid, and then we knocked them out in the semi-finals after they beat us easily in the group stage. So in the end, only did little bits of technical work like you would do at Liverpool or you would do at any club. But the day-to-day stuff was all quite mundane, run around the pitch twice to warm up with everybody, start stretching, do some drills to get yourself, to get the blood pumping a bit, get the heart racing a bit. And then you go into a game or you go into, some sort of formation. But the technical work, when we looked at videos, it was 5 minutes. It was 5 minutes on the other side because we knew who we were playing. Might have been 10 minutes if we had a European game, but it wasn't much more.
So when I was coming through Liverpool and myself and you would go out for a warm-up and you used to cross it and I used to diving headers in the cop end, who used to do the diving headers in the equivalent to the cop end at Real Madrid?
Well, I think back then we just paired up and it was depending on where you were playing. So if I was playing left midfield, I'd just paired up with Roberto Carlos and we'd just smash balls to each other up and down the field. But we'd warm up as a team initially, just do a few little doggies, few exercises. But it wasn't as technical as you see everybody doing now, 5-a-side matches and all that before a game and all running out at the same time and doing. And even when you come out at half time now, everybody's doing shuttles to get you going, isn't it? I mean, sports science has moved on. And if you can get that extra 0.5% by, doing shuttles at when you come out at beginning of the second half, fine. But I see Sheffield United players doing it now and they're languishing at the bottom of the league by 1,000 points. So in the end, it's not rocket science, is it? You're managing at the moment. If you've got 11 players and the other 11 are better than you, there's a good chance you're going to lose. And that's what happens. Man City have got the best team. They're winning the league by a country mile. Bayern have got the best team in Germany by loads, and they're going to win. And, you know, if you get a few injuries, it'll knock you down, so you need a bigger squad. But when it comes down to it, you know, 9 times out of 10, 9.5 times out of 10, the best team will always beat the other team.
I remember the quarter-final, Steve, and I remember your midfield partner. What a player, cult hero, this fella, Fernando Redondo, and what he did. I think Henning Berg still got nightmares over what he did. The win at Old Trafford. Yeah. Then, of course, the crowning moment for you, Steve, winning in Paris against Valencia in that Champions League final. The greatest night of your career, bar none?
Yeah, because, you know, you win trophies that people deem are the biggest and the best around. So, yeah, of course, in a cup competition, you know, people say winning the league is more important because it goes from A to B at the beginning to the end of the season and your level of consistencies. But I think when you win the Champions League, it's classed now as the biggest and the best, and you consider the best team in Europe, aren't you, Chris? And you know, that's probably the most important trophy nowadays to win.
And the man of the match as well, as you were, Steve. You scored, and I think Fergie, it was afterwards, said that you ran the show that night in Paris.
Yeah, it was. To be honest, we were probably second favourites going into that game because Valencia were a decent team. They were above us in the league. But the game was really, really easy, actually, really comfortable. It was it's nice, you know, to play in a game when you know you're going to win after 60, 70 minutes, and you can cruise through to the 90th minute knowing that you've won the Champions League. You can sort of look and breathe it in and not panic, and there was never a moment's concern that we were ever going to lose the game once we went in front. So I think that was the most enjoyable thing about it, you know, to go away and, you know, 8-9 months later have my father there and all my mates there, 20 people in the stands going crazy. It was a really nice feeling, actually. I was particularly for my father and my younger brother who still lived with my father after the loss of my mother. It was a real nice feeling because, of course, there's lots of question marks about you going away, and regardless of whether you win or lose, people will always go, "Oh, you know, he went away and he wasn't successful." That's classed as everything nowadays, and of course, there's more than that when you go and play in a foreign country and learn new languages. There's more to it all than that. The fact that you've had the bottle to go and do it, you know, it speaks kudos for players, even if they come back after the year or whatever. The fact that they went and tried it, I think, is great. So, yeah, but to win the trophy, you know, of course, it always helps with that thought process, doesn't it?
And Rob, you popped over. You've had a good night out, a few good nights out in Madrid, I'm told.
Well, I'll let Shaggy tell you that story, but I think what I will say is obviously he spoke about all his friends and family being at the game, and I would have loved to have gone to the game, but obviously with me playing and I could never get over to see him. Honestly, I was desperate to get over and see his games, and obviously watch him being successful, because I love the fact that he probably is the UK's best player that's ever gone and played, you know, abroad. I mean, that goes without saying, but I'd never had the chance to go. I mean, he's just spoken there about the Valencia game. I think we were with England, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
You met up a few days later. So he's brought us a Champions League medal to show off, and I'm just sitting there. I'm sitting there next to Martin Keown.
Right. The legend.
But I'd gone away in the summer after our season finished, and obviously Real Madrid played. I can't even think who he played, but it was the last game of the season. They needed to win the league. So I've spoke to Steve and I said, well, look, I've got a chance here, and I was in Portugal. He went, well, we'll fly up. And myself and my cousin, who was on holiday with me, we flew up, and we spent probably about 3 or 4 days with you, didn't we? And I mean, after the game, yeah, we had a good night out. Shag, you want to carry on from there then?
Well, you came over. What was your cousin's name? Paul.
Paul.
Yeah. So you came over with Paul, stayed at ours, of course, and then went the game. And we needed to win to win the league, and we were always going to win at home, and we duly did. And then we went out afterwards. And then we went. I mean, this was.
But even before we went out, so obviously we're in the players' lounge, and you just walked in with like 2 Real Madrid tops, didn't you?
Oh, yeah.
Stick them on. And
stick them on.
What for? He went, no, come on, we're doing a tour of the city.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. Yeah,
it was like 11 o'clock at night, wasn't it?
Yeah, we were the tour bus was outside, wasn't it? And I said, put a t-shirt on, jump on the bus with us, and we'll go around the city. And you were saying, oh no, I can't do that. I said, it's fine, don't worry about it. Everybody does it. So you put your whatever 2003, 2002 winners T-shirt on.
That was the first time I've ever won the league, Dan.
Jump on the bus, and then off we go around Madrid at 11 o'clock at night, you know, an hour after the game, an hour and a half after the game, with millions of people on the streets. And they've already boarded up this fountain, Cibeles, where we go around and we celebrate on. And there was a lot of at the time political problems with the team, and not the council saying you can't celebrate there, and that's what Real Madrid do. And so there was a lot of fallout, which I'll come to at the end of this. And Robbie jumped on the bus. We stop off. I said, "Are you coming on?" He said, "Oh no, I can't go and dance around the fountain. That's not allowed." And
that's taken it.
So we go and do all that. I said, "All right, stay there." And then as we drive off, there's a load of English fans, and they all start singing your name, don't they? They all see you on the bus. Can't believe it. All start singing your name. Oh, and then we're on there now. We get back to the ground, and then we're off to the restaurant. And then the restaurant turns into the restaurant is at 2, 3 in the morning, turns into a nightclub at 4, 5, 6 in the morning. Leave the nightclub at 9:15 in the morning, early in the morning, and then it's off to a certain Ronaldo's house to carry on the partying. Little did I know we had a tour of the city at 11 o'clock in the morning, I think. And I was still in I was still in Ronaldo's house with you.
Yeah, well, but what I always remember about that as well is, so we're in the nightclub in Madrid, and Ronaldo, he just comes up and he's got like a big glass of vodka and Coke, or vodka and something, and he's giving me this drink. Oh, I think he's giving me the drink, and I just took it off him and just downed it in one, and he went, no, cheers. So I had to go and buy him a drink. I had to go and buy him a drink with my bonus for winning the league.
But then, you've told me this before, Rob, you then get to Ronaldo's house, big pile, I'm sure in the suburbs, one of the posh suburbs of Madrid. You walk into Ronaldo's house, and what's going off?
So what happened was, so we've obviously gone back. So myself and Steve, we went back to his house before Ronaldo got there. So obviously we go then, a security guard lets us in, and we go straight into this bar, and there's a pool table, there's a big massive telly, and there's a bar. So Steve goes behind the bar, he starts pulling the pints. So we're having a pint, playing a game of pool. Next minute Ronaldo comes in, and then he goes behind the bar. Then he plays some music, and he puts on the smoke machine. He puts on the smoke machine, and these big flashing lights, and then we hear, "Well, loving it, coming at you live from Leeds." And next he starts playing some DJ from Leeds, and I'm like, wow, what is happening here?
Oh God.
One of the most surreal nights I've ever had in my life. And obviously, we obviously had a few drinks there, and then a few hours later, you had to go and do that tour of the city.
I never went. The two people who missed the tour of the city were me and Ronaldo.
Sorry, I'm going to rephrase that. The 3 people who never went was me, you.
Oh, yeah. Me and you. Your painted and decorated cousin Paul and Ronaldo. But the fallout of that night that's when Vicente Del Bosque was sacked. Then really, he got relieved of his job duties then. And Fernando Hierro, the skipper, whose contract was up for renewal and he was promised a new contract, he was effectively sacked as well. And it was all about the fallout between the club, the politics of the club, the owner of Real Madrid wanting us to do one thing, the council saying another, the players rebelling, and then the president came out and unceremoniously sacked Del Bosque, which was awful, and then reneged on his deal with Fernando Hierro, and then I think that you knew what it was starting to become like then.
Yeah, I mean, that was the real Galactico era, because a lot of people forget you won the Champions League in 2000. Figo, and I still remember, I was in Tenerife. I would have been 14 years of age, I think I was. The news broke. I promise you, Rob, 14. And the news broke, Figo leaving Barca to Real. Holy shit. That's massive news. Zidane in 2001, and then Ronaldo joins in 2002. And you're a part of it, Steve. You're seeing the Galacticos being built. We've obviously heard a story about Ronaldo, but Figo and Zidane, did you get on with them? Yeah,
great. Luis was great. Spoke really good English. His wife is Scandinavian. She's from Sweden, Helen. He was a lovely lad. got on really well. Zizou, same. I mean, when Zizou arrived, he didn't know Spanish. He only spoke French and Italian. So he was very shy, actually. Kept himself to himself in the dressing room like you would do until he learned the Spanish language. He was very very good mates with Claude Makelele and the French-speaking lads. But yeah, they were brilliant. No egos. When they arrived, fitted into the dressing room really well. Of course, wanted to succeed because that's what they do and they have done at Barcelona and Juventus previously. So it was actually very, very easy, very easy. They knew the dressing room that they were coming into because we'd won the league and we'd won the Champions League previous. You know, they'd won the Champions League in '98, so they were coming into a very successful dressing room that you knew didn't need tinkering with. It was a case of, you know, one player coming in and adding to what we had, and no problem at all. They were great guys, actually. Great guys. They all were, I must admit. I wouldn't say there was any nuisances in the team. We had a really good relationship the whole side. No pain in the asses really. Everybody wanted to win. And if you were a pain in the ass, you were just, you know, you were out the club, to be very honest. It wasn't hard. It was just a case of let's get on with it and let's try and be successful.
Obviously, God on this pod, he's the best number 9 you've played with, but yes. Ronaldo must have pushed him pretty close. How good was he? Yeah, he was amazing, but I was just sad when he joined us. He'd had an incredible amount of problems with his knees and he'd been injured a lot. So you can only imagine how good he was at 19 at Barca and things like that. I mean, people say he was, you know, just out of this world, really. And when he joined us, he was brilliant, but he was struggling to keep his weight down. He was struggling to keep fit. His lifestyle wasn't probably conducive to a fully fit, superstar, because the Brazilians like to enjoy themselves. That's how they lived, and that's how they were. And himself, apparently, and apparently they liked Leeds DJs as well. Bizarrely, yeah. But you know, Roberto Carlos liked to enjoy himself. Flavio Conceição, who was there, another Brazilian. Julio Cesar, who was there, another Brazilian. They liked to enjoy themselves, and it was fine. The manager had no problem with it as long as they turned up and did the business, which they did, and played great. It's just that, you know, because of Ronnie's injury problems, and he's had so many problems with his knees, you know, he had to pick and choose when he trained anyway. So, you know, it was harder for him, very much harder for him to keep on the good side of, you know, of a high level of fitness. Roberto Carlos was easy. He was just, you know, he'd do whatever he needed to do and just run around like a madman. But with Ronnie, it was different. But they were all great lads and great characters and generous to the hilt and always had a smile on the face. And, you know, that's brilliant when you go into the training ground and go into the dressing room of them all. It's amazing. Just memories of Madrid. And I always think, Steve, when I look back and I read through the stories, I mean, you were loved by the Real Madrid fans. There's always a feeling that you were dealt with harshly. I mean, when you look back on you're kind of coming to an end of your 4 years in Madrid and you've had time now to reflect later in life, do you feel you were hard done by the way that you were treated towards the end? No, because towards the end I wanted to leave. I thought the politics of Real Madrid and the fact that you need to vote in and out a president every 4 years, 5 years, it's like a popularity contest at times. It's like being in charge of the government. Some things you get right, some things you get wrong. And I think, you know, Florentino Perez, who's president now and who's been brilliant as certainly his second stint as a president, I think the fact that he ended his tenure a couple of years later, and the fact that when I left and Real Madrid went through this barren few years where they were awful and were chopping and changing the managers every 5 minutes, I think it showed that what he was thinking of, his dynasty in his first stint, was wrong. He wanted to bring in a lot of these star players and he wanted to dilute the squad and bring in younger players from the academy to try and balance the books. And once I left and Morientes left and Makelele left and Solari left, you know, the heart of the squad was ripped out of the team, and the quality that came in from the academy wasn't good enough. And then you see them, you know, the treatment of Hierro and the treatment of Vicente Del Bosque was really poor. And we went then of the manager looking after the team to then the president and the sporting director trying to run the team. And you knew
I've said before that that pre-season when I was going to leave, because I left eventually in the August, was ridiculous. We went and visited 7 countries around the Far East, shaking hands with people and having dinners. And I once said about the Disneyfication about Real Madrid. That's what was happening. They were more interested in making money than they were of looking after the team. And you could see the writing on the wall. You really could. Del Bosque went, who was one of the most successful managers ever, and they brought in Manchester United's number 2 at the time, which, of course, I felt sorry for Carlos because people looked down on him straight away. He's a lovely man and he tried his best, but people, when he walked through the door, people went, "Well, I'm not having him. He's the number 2 at United." But Valdano had brought him in, and they felt as if they could control him. And of course, his tenure didn't last long at all. And then, a number of managers came in very quickly. Luxemburgo, Manzano, Camacho stayed for 5 minutes, and you could tell it was a sinking ship. And then for the next, I don't even know, 4 to 5 years, the football he played wasn't great, and they were not as successful as they once were.
And it was a sinking ship. And then Kevin Keegan gets on the phone. The Spice Boys are back. You're back with Robbie.
Back with Robbie, yeah.
You're at Man City. It's a good time. Did you enjoy your football at City? Both of you?
Yeah, I did. It spoiled it for me because I was injured so often. So it was less enjoyable. But the club itself was brilliant. Kevin was great. Derek Fazackley was there. The lads were all brilliant. The staff, I thought, I got on very well with all the staff at the grounds and stuff, and I thoroughly enjoyed my time. I just wanted to play more of a part. I had really bad problems with my both Achilles tendons, and I was getting muscular injuries, and that's why I decided to stop. I stopped at 33, and I just knew that if I would have carried on, I would have gone to somewhere else and needed operations, which wasn't fair on the team that I would have gone to. I needed something doing with my Achilles tendons, which of course is never an easy operation. So I was very conscious of that. I felt it because of my injuries. I was losing a little bit of pace, which was paramount to how I played. And I just knew I wasn't enjoying the football side of it because I was in agony constantly. When I'd start training, I'd be 20 yards behind everybody waiting for my Achilles tendons to warm up. And I said to the missus at the time, I'm going to stop at the end of the year. I'll just go nice and quietly. I'll stop. And, I'm not into all that furore about retiring and shouting it from the rooftops and people saying nice things about it. I'm not interested in that at all. So I got to the end of the season and that was it. I knew in my mind that even though I had offers from foreign countries to play, I wasn't really interested in it. I just wanted to, I didn't have children at the time. I just wanted to sort of depart football quietly and get on with the rest of my life, really.
And fair play. What a career it is. And listening to you there, Rob, you must have loved just that final couple of seasons with Maka at Main Road, or was it Etihad? It was Main Road.
Etihad.
It was Etihad.
Yeah, well, it goes without saying. I've been on record numerous times and said he is the greatest player I've played with. And we've spoke about all his career there, places where he's been, but we never really went into the detail of how good he was at Liverpool. We spoke before about his positions. I think certainly the 95, 96 year at Liverpool when he was just, he was unstoppable. We did have a decent team, but whenever he got the ball, he'd run the length of the pitch and no one would get it off him. He was our get-out man. Anyone was struggling, you give him the ball and he would just control the game. So he was, incredible to play with. A real good mate of mine. Obviously, you all know that. But yeah, getting to spend his obviously last year in Man City, albeit we weren't the same players. It was still brilliant. I like Steve. I wasn't really into the furore of telling everyone that I was retiring. Hence why I can still get my boots back on.
You're available for selection.
Just available for selection. But yeah, look, I love playing with him, and I've played with some great players. I really have. But for me, he's number one. Just slightly beating Steven Gerrard.
It's interesting you say that, Rob, about us not really touching a lot on the Liverpool. You're 9 years in the first team at Liverpool, Steve, which means I'll probably get an awful lot of flack from the Liverpool fans listening to this. I know you did in times as well, and with all these years that have moved on, your relationship in general with Liverpool fans, obviously I'm sure the majority still in love with the player that you were for the football club. You still get one or two naysayers that still hold it against you, your manner of your exit from the club?
No. To be very honest, I'm still involved with Liverpool now. I mean, Liverpool, no fans really harp on back to when I played. I'm still involved with the Liverpool Academy, which I go to. So I think most fans know I'm still involved with the club. There's probably people that I've got a problem with me leaving Liverpool at the time and leaving on a free contract because, of course, everybody's obsessed with money and how much you get. So maybe that was a point at that time and place, and maybe people think about it now, but nobody necessarily mentioned it to me now, and I don't expect people to mention it to me at the time. At the time, I think people were upset about it, and there was a lot of, as I said, you couldn't control the narrative because I was one of the first, and Liverpool wanted to sign me, wanted me to stay. Of course, you can't win that press battle with a club. Everybody adores the club. The club will go for hundreds of years, and players come and go. So you just have to accept it. But there was a load of nonsense at the time, written and said, and on radio polls, and people saying, I was going to earn this amount of money, which of course was all proved wrong because I didn't sign a new contract. But it was he's going to earn this amount of money, and there's nurses earning X amount of money. So of course, it's a lot of the time people were having a bit of a field day from it, but. I was a local lad from Kirkdale, very, very working class area, like Robbie was from Toxteth. We had more important things on our mind than listening to people spout off who don't know half of a story. And that's why I take everything now with a pinch of salt, and more so because of social media. Most of the stories that you read about are complete garbage. So it was back then. So nothing ever fazed me. My father was very proud of me. My mother likewise. My father's friends who all played locally in Kirkdale and Walton, who were very, very good at playing football, but probably never had the opportunities to reach the professional status because of the early 60s and times like that. And they didn't have the right availability. They didn't have the transport facilities. The clubs weren't, as proactive as they were in the 80s, 90s. So, I was playing for them, making it as a footballer, and they were so proud of me that I went and played for Liverpool, and then I went on to play for that glorious white shirt of the Alfredo Di Stefano era, which was incredibly famous, Puskas and people like that. So they were the only people that mattered to me about whether I wanted to play. I was very professional. I gave it my all. But then if it's time to move on because of different scenarios that fans don't realise, it's time to move on, and that. So it never ever influenced me. That never ever bothered me. I joined Liverpool for nothing. They didn't, I left for nothing. Nobody paid anything for me, and that was the way it was.
Yeah, great. Yeah, listen, can't knock that at all, Steve. And anyone listening to this that perhaps have knocked you in the past will listen to that and say, "Hey, listen, fair play, massive respect to that." Oh, well, maybe. And I want to finish, coming back full circle on the punditry stuff. This Liverpool team, obviously this podcast goes out on Monday. Liverpool don't play again, I think, until April 4th at Arsenal. Jurgen this week has said impossible that Liverpool finish top four. It's not impossible. He's playing mind games there, is he not?
Of course it's not. Of course it's not impossible because of the points difference between them. They've only got West Ham, I think, now, and Chelsea in front of them. Forgive me if I'm wrong. So, of course, they've got a chance. But you're not just, before the Wolves victory, which was a hard victory for them, and it wasn't a scintillating performance. It was just a gritty, grind-down performance, which sometimes you have to have, particularly after the European fixture. And, they were at home, but they were away, of course, in Budapest. Of course, they've got a chance. But, Liverpool are better when they have their full-strength squad in, and they'll be better next season. I think that goes without saying. So I think they've acquitted themselves really well. I thought they overachieved when they were top of the league in Christmas and January. And since January, they've underachieved, very much so. We all know why. It's easy to see and it's easy to say. And we all know why last year, listening to Manchester City fans, when they were struggling or not struggling, but not anywhere near Liverpool, it was because of Vincent Kompany. It was because of the problems with Laporte. And that's completely legitimate. And it's the same this year with Liverpool. And sometimes you just have to take it on the chin and move on and try and find scenarios. But it has heavily affected them this year. They'll have a great chance of winning the Champions League because in a knockout formation, you just need to get the job done. They'll have a great chance of that because they'll always score goals. They have to be professional and still carry on to try and beat Chelsea, who have got, of course, eyeing the Champions League up as well. And they were excellent last night against Galactico Madrid. So it's hard. They have to catch Chelsea because Man United and City and Leicester are way ahead. And Chelsea are in really good form at the minute. So I can understand why Jurgen's saying that. Are
you paying out on our bet, Robbie, yet?
Well, nothing to pay out, is it? No one's told me anything to do yet, Chris, have they? Shag, we've got we had a bet. Well, we had a bet per se, didn't we, about should Liverpool? Because Chris is a big Man U fan. I should have said that earlier on. Actually, you wouldn't have got on. But
sorry, Steve.
He's got a bet that Man United finish above Liverpool. Now we've done this a while ago. Now, so obviously I'll have to do some sort of forfeit.
Yeah.
I actually don't know what it is yet. I might have to wear a Man United shirt.
Oh, don't wear that. Just stop eating Chinese for a week. that's never happening.
Well, I'd rather wear a Man U shirt on.
I know. You'd rather wear a Man U shirt for a week than give up Chinese for a week.
You cheeky
brilliant.
No, I know. Yeah, I know. I did know you're a Man U fan. Yeah, but
sorry, Steve. We tell you that at the end.
I think they'll. I think. What would you rather do, Chris? Would you rather finish second or beat Milan tonight and, win the Europa League?
And what, still finish top four?
No, finish fifth.
Oh, Jesus.
Swap with Liverpool. Well, not Liverpool because West Ham is fifth, aren't they? Liverpool is sixth.
What would I rather? I mean, this is a cop-out answer. I'd probably rather finish in the Champions League than win the Europa. Well, no, in fact, if you win the Europa League, you get in the Champions League anyway.
Of course you do.
I'll take the Europa League. I'll take the Europa League.
Sorry,
Trophy's important.
Yeah,
but I think there is
so.
merit. I think there's merit to what Ollie says. I think you can hide behind a trophy. And I think, listen, I'm not Ollie's biggest fan. I've said it time and time again. Honestly, I think he's very fortunate to be in that job. But progress has been made. I think this upcoming summer is a big one. The one that they all want is Haaland. I think if Man United move heaven and earth for him, maybe another centre half, I think even with Ollie in charge, I think they'll go close next year.
And do you think now, with the pandemic, people struggling, that United should go out and spend £150 million? Because I have this inner fight with me. I don't think Liverpool should spend. I don't think Liverpool should spend money in the. I think if we need to suffer, we need to suffer. But I think it's slightly. I think it's slightly uncouth to blow £150 million when fans are not allowed in and clubs have lost money all year, and people.
Absolutely fair.
Certainly, I'm speaking from a Liverpool perspective and where I was brought up. But what do you think about Man U?
Well, it's interesting because if you finish outside the top four, I don't think Liverpool will be given that option.
No.
I don't see the Fenway Sports Group spending money if you don't make Champions League football. That's why more than ever, Champions League football is absolutely imperative this season. Do Man U spend £150 million in Haaland? I honestly don't think they do. No. I think, with the pandemic, do Dortmund require 150 million? I don't know. Is it neither 100? I know it's.
Dortmund will sell, won't they? They'll sell. It's just that I hear people saying, "Oh, last summer Liverpool, we should have went big. We should have went big." It's like, well, no, you can't. You can't go big. Of course, you can't go big, and you can't necessarily go big this year. Liverpool brought in Jota, Thiago,
good signing,
Tsimikas, and balanced the books to a certain extent by getting people out the door. I just think it's not called for this moment just to say, here's 100, here's 150, on two players, on three players.
But that's you being sensible, though, isn't it? That's you being, obviously, getting your business head on. But surely from a manager point of view or a fan point of view, you want to spend money and you want to be successful. So the fans and managers aren't prepared to sort of wait and suffer, like you say.
I know, but that's just my own personal thing. I just don't think it'd be. I just don't think it'd be right on Liverpool to spend £100 million on one player. Just to go again. You know what I mean? In this climate, maybe next year or the year after. I just think now, no fans in the stadium. People struggling, Liverpool losing money. left, right, and centre because there's no fans and the ground's not open. So you think it looks weird. You know, you were born in you were born in Toxteth.
I know. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It does look weird, but I'm sorry, with the fans and managers.
No, I know.
Success.
I know. Yeah. I know.
And the other worry, I think the other big elephant in the room is if Man United and Liverpool don't go in for Haaland, I think, and I've said this on my radio show over here in Dubai, I think it's inevitable that he ends up at City. And that's a frightening prospect for the rest of the league. Because everyone that I've spoken to, I've got a few scout mates in the Premier League who have gone over to see him in Salzburg. This kid is generational. So if United or Liverpool don't go in now and they allow City a free run at him, oh my God. I mean, that's just taking an already dominant team. Aguero, I expect to move on, and you're adding a generational talent that could well be on a par with I'll say Rooney for now. There's hallmarks, you know, a lot of comparisons made there, but someone who could go on and be maybe not Ronaldo, Messi-esque, Steve, but someone who could go on and score 30, 40 goals.
His numbers are Ronaldo, Messi-esque at this age, aren't they? Certainly better than Ronaldo's at this age. I've seen him lots of times, and he's been outstanding. And there's talk about Chelsea, and there's talk about Chelsea need a number 9, don't they? And Man City certainly need a number 9 if you believe everything about Aguero and about the way they play. They might have to change the way they play, Man City. That's the only thing. If they get that type of player there, but Manchester United will certainly be interested. I don't know whether Liverpool would be interested. I know he's a super player.
It's more Mbappe, isn't it? I think Mbappe's more the one.
I think he suits the way Liverpool play more. But I think Mbappe would probably be twice as expensive and would warrant wages that are just too expensive for Liverpool. I really do. And again, spending £200 million on a player and giving him £500,000 a week, it just doesn't sit right with me. It really doesn't.
Just on that point then, I'll ask you this as well, Rob. If you're saying Liverpool are not in a position, or you feel that, I mean, again, if they don't make the Champions League, they might not even have this debate. They'll simply not be able to spend. Does Jurgen at all then think, well, wait a minute, I need to alter one or two things here. If I've not got the money and the club isn't willing to spend, there's no fear from either of you that Jurgen says, I'm going to walk away here?
I wouldn't have thought so. I'm not talking about they'll get the money that you're saying, the 150 million.
Yeah, they'll get money, won't they?
They'll get money, but you can guarantee more or less that they'll bring in players to sort of benefit the squad, because that's one of Liverpool's problems. When the first 11 are not playing, then you look at the squad is not as strong as maybe 5-6 of the teams in the Premier League. So I think they'll strengthen certainly areas of the team that need strengthen and strengthen that squad. Maybe they will get money, but certainly not to the extent of what you talked about for them players.
Yeah, they'll get a certain chunk. They'll get a certain chunk of money, and they'll be backed by the Fenway Sports Group. And I think they'll try and sell some of their players who they don't really count on, and we could list about 4 or 5 of them who were out on loan or who were not playing enough now for the first team squad, and they could benefit from the money that they generate from selling them. So there'd be a significant pot. But I'm the same as Bob. I don't think there's any chance that they're going to go out and spend 75 like we did on Virgil or the goalkeeper. I mean, that with inflation and everything else, that will go up. So I don't think we'll see the likes of them. Not this season anyway. But I certainly think Liverpool will strengthen. I don't think you have to worry if you're a Liverpool fan what will happen. They'll get players back. They'll strengthen again in the summer. But I just don't think they'll be able to strengthen to the extent of the going into battle with 4 or 5 teams for Haaland or Sancho or certainly an Mbappe. I think that's just a non-starter whatsoever.
Yeah, listen, I hear you on that. It's going to be a fascinating summer ahead, and you're right, with this pandemic, it's going to be interesting as to which teams spend, which teams think of the ethical and the moral standpoint of it all, and which teams simply can't spend because, of course, the fans haven't been in the stadium for the past year or so. I'm conscious, Steve, we've kept you far too long. Can I thank you enough? Well, no worries. I say I can't thank you enough. I know you two are good mates, but from my point of view, massive thank you for joining us on the Rob Fowler podcast. It's been great.
Thanks, no worries. Thanks very much, Mr. Stephen.
No worries, lad. I'll go and have a look at the Cheltenham form now, and then I'll see you later on.
Top man, Steve. Thanks for that, mate.
See you later, boys. Have a good day.
Speak to you later,
See you later, lad. See you later.
Thanks very much, mate.